Blessings, blessings, and blessings, everybody. This is Dr. David D. King with Kingdom Citizens of Wisconsin. And we are doing, let me say it so everybody understand, we are doing a pre-recorded show. So that means don't be mad at don't be mad at us, don't be attacking us because we can't respond back. But when we start to see the remarks, we will respond back. So I am excited to have these two um, amazing bullies that's with me today. Do not poke the bear today, you guys. We have one that is probably going to come through the airwave and just choke you if you say something crazy. So let's bring her on, ladies and gentlemen. She is AKA Constitutional Queen, AKA Mama Bear, AKA Watch Your Back, Sarah.
Wow, I'm really getting a complex.
See, I'm trying to stir it up now, so
Yeah.
that way you just go all the way up. Let me put my Steelers where you can
Sounds
see
good.
my. There you go. Now you can see my Steeler helmet.
Oh my goodness.
Steeler Nation. But no. But last but definitely not least, we got a lady that will drive to Minnesota and Wisconsin and pick you off if you tick her off. Amen. She is a mentor, a mama bear. She's a bully, but then she'll help you get your life together. And the name she has is Mercy. But if you're a liberal and you don't like the Constitutional, she show no mercy, aka Amber.
Oh my gosh. Wow. This gets more and more elaborate every time.
I know I gotta create new stuff every time. So and that way I get you guys riled up at the same time.
I feel like I'm at a fight night or something.
Hey, you know, sometimes it got to be that. You know,
It feels like that sometimes. Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes it's got to be that fight night. You know, where you get riled up, you get stirred up, and then you go do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what we're gonna do today, but I think I'm gonna start off by just ticking y'all off, and it just I don't know. I think I want to I don't even know which way
He's
to.
just the instigator.
Yeah, agitator, instigator.
My
Who,
brother was
me?
the same, so.
Yes,
Who,
you.
me?
Oh, yes, you.
Oh, wow. Well, if people stop doing dumb stuff, then
True.
you know, then we don't have to instigate.
That's actually something we were talking about in my depth program on the discussion forums. We're kind of half joking, like sometimes with all the stupidity and insanity going on in the world, we come very close to thinking an aristocracy of the intelligent might not be a bad idea.
I know, because you see certain things happening and you sitting there like,
yeah,
okay.
I've been guilty of saying stupid people shouldn't vote. And I know that's a horrible thing to say because we all have our rights and our liberties. But sometimes it's like, if you're not educated, if you're not taking even the smallest iota of effort to figure things out, and you're just looking at, you know, what's on the paper and oh, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
You don't care, and so why are you even bothering?
Well, and that's the thing, you know, you've got these 18-year-olds who come out of high school, they can't even read, and they're supposed to go out and vote, and their grandmas come to help them vote because their grandmas are the ones telling them who to vote for, and of course their grandmas are Democrats or
they're
whatever
Democrats and think things are still the same deal.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just like, what so I get there's a right to vote, but I don't believe it's universal. I do honestly believe that there is a limit, and the founding fathers were trying to make it in such a way that only the people who were informed and invested in the government would be going to the voting block, because those were the people who knew that these laws and these, all of the referendums and the people they were voting for into office, they had a direct impact on their daily lives. And so there is something to be said for, if you are not informed, if you don't know what you're talking about, if you're just voting based on a party, get informed first before you go to the polls, because I don't want to see you there, honestly. I don't want to see you coming in there and some of these people will come in and they'll rant and rave about how they're voting Democrat and how dare those Republicans. And it's like, I don't want to hear you, because you have no idea. You are voting for the very thing that is destroying your life, and you have no idea.
But wait a minute. But wait a minute, because I got to play the agitator now.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, then we have to do the same thing on the Republican side.
Yeah, totally.
Because anytime you think Second Amendment has to do with hunting, you don't need to vote.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You sitting there. For some reason, we're supposed to be
In what twist of language does in what twist of language does the word militia mean hunting?
Well,
what
Amber, don't you know that was what they were doing when they were fighting the Revolutionary War? They weren't hunting. I mean, they weren't going out and fighting people. They were hunting animals.
They were shooting rabbits so they could eat. But the thing about it, though, when we talk about this, I'm glad we right here. So let's talk about uneducated voters, right?
Yeah.
Because on both sides, we only do voting based off of what, like you said, grandma. Now, Republicans doesn't take their child to the poll and say, okay, vote. They do that at home. Mm-hmm. You vote Republican no matter what.
Yeah.
That was the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. Vote for a Republican no matter what.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, so he can be a child molester still because he's a Republican, vote for him.
Yeah.
You had the Republican Party, and we talked about this at an event I went to for my mayor race. I was at an event, lovely people, I enjoyed them and everything, but we started to have this conversation, how the Republican Party fight against homosexuality, right?
Yeah.
But then allow a homosexual to parade him around the state to say vote, to go vote.
Yeah. Well, did you hear, what is that? He's a really, really wealthy guy. Oh man, I'm trying to remember his name, but he was fully on board with the Republicans. He was donating millions of dollars to these campaigns and things. And he basically finally got fed up with it, not because he is a Democrat, but because his worldview came up against the conservative principles that the Republicans used to stand for, right? Like the abortion issue, he no longer could support the Republicans because now they're actively out against the transgender issue. And he was a homosexual. So he was a conservative until his ideology, until his worldview. I was just listening to, I'm trying to remember who I was listening to. It's one of the political pundits, I think Steve Deace. He was talking about this idea of a lot of people will rally around a certain party, right? But the moment their worldview butts up against that party's platform or that party, they bail, because and that's the thing that we Republicans do not understand. We have to get to the heart of these matters, because we have a lot of people claiming to be conservatives who are not. They might want conservative fiscal policy, but when you come down to conservative family values and conservative
and honestly,
business values,
for the most part, we should be keeping people's bedroom business out of the public view, out of the public opinion.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Why? That's the fun part. No, I'm just joking.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, anything to do with what should have been the jurisdiction of the church, what should have been the jurisdiction of the ecclesia, right? That that stuff should be nothing. Feeding the poor, marriage, family, all of those things, those should never have been accessed by our federal government or our state governments, because that's not their jurisdiction. That's not their realm of authority.
And it's our private rights. I
Right.
mean,
But
maybe
when
maybe someone has a different religious belief that that higher power they believe in does not disapprove of those things, and that's their right to do so.
Right.
But you know, the
And
thing
it's your
about
private right.
the thing about it is, you got people, right? And you'll say, I'm a conservative. Now you got to say, which conservative? Are you a Christian conservative?
Yeah.
Are you a physical conservative? Are you just a conservative because you don't like the Democrats?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, why are you a conservative, right? Because then you had Republicans say, I never vote for a Democrat, but David Clark would never identify himself in the public as a conservative or Republican and run as a Democrat. And so you sitting there like, okay, you guys, y'all so mixed up because you'll say you won't do one thing, but then you go back and you do it because it's David Clark, but you will vote for a Democrat because it's David Clark, instead of saying, David Clark, stand on your values, stand on what you believe in. And now you parading them around like a hero.
Yeah.
But you had to go to the other side to. I don't believe you got to be a Democrat to win a race in the city of Milwaukee.
Well, and that was we had just had that conversation at our county party. A bunch of people were talking about how we conservatives always lose when we bring the abortion issue into the situation, that we need to just stop. We need to just let it go and take what comes and take how are they trying to say it, that we needed to not be so militant about our abortion stance, right? And I was like, it's the nuance that we keep inserting into the abortion issue that gets us the losses, because we can't even stand on our own convictions. We can't even stand on the absolute truth that this is murder. And so therefore, every time we won Roe v. Wade, we got Roe v. Wade undone.
Overturned,
and so now we're going back and going, oh, well, now in order to keep our base, in order to keep our our elected seats, we need to now kind of be a little bit more. It's a nuanced conversation. We need to talk about the health of the mother, and their right to choose. And it's like, no, it is not a right to choose murder. I'm sorry. This is not something. We keep backtracking, we keep compromising, and this is what got us into this mess. Now we have a completely immoral society who literally has Satan worshipers standing in the public square ripping Bibles to shred. Let's try that with the Quran, shall we? Right?
They won't do that with the Quran.
They won't do
at
that
all.
with the Quran, but they feel perfectly safe ripping the Bible to shreds, when that is exactly what our founding fathers based our entire governmental system on, was the scriptures.
Well, you gotta look at it this way too. The Bible teaches us that out of the heart flows the issues of life.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at conservatives and what they claim they stand for, a lot of their hearts is not where it's supposed to be. Like if I went right now to the Democrat Party and says, hey, I saw the light, I want to be a part of you guys, they'll look at me and say, heck no. We vetted you. We know what you really stands for. Yeah. It's no way you're gonna tell me you got a conviction and you now going. It's no. We don't trust you based on what you stand for. Mm-hmm. The Republican and conservative, we never do that. We never go deep enough to look at a person's life, and then when they get in office, right? When they get in office, everybody is saying, "Oh my God." Right? I'm at this event, right? I'm sitting at this event, and we brought up State Representative Bob Donovan, right? Everybody in that meeting says, y'all know he's a Democrat. He just ran on the Republican ticket.
Yeah.
And when they said it, I'm sitting there like, wow, somebody finally said it.
Yeah.
And then I began to share how he got there. And he only got there because certain Republicans didn't like David Karts, who was the Milwaukee County Republican chair. So they all supported Donovan.
Yeah.
But then what did Donovan do? The day of his inauguration, one Republican spoke, every Democrat and liberal spoke after that. So when we send people to the poll uneducated. So a lot of times it's our fault because we bank on them to be uneducated. We bank them on being, as Amber would say, No Mercy would say, stupid and ignorant going to the poll.
Yeah.
You know, we live on that.
Here's how I see us coming out of this. So yes, we've addressed the problem. It's a big problem. The way I see us coming out of this is figuring out, one, where the missing gaps are in the desire to be educated about this, and the part that's kind of where I see things is the missing component to connect the voter to being, an informed, voter is why it matters to them.
Yeah.
And that's the missing component, because most of us went through history classes. Sarah, you're exempt from this because you were homeschooled. Most of us went through history class, geography, civics. If you had civics, most people, millennials and younger, did not have civics.
Yeah.
But if you had any of those classes and social studies, it was drudgery. It was remembering names and dates. And they did it in the most illogical fashion.
Well, and there was no connection to your present. Like they
never discussed why. They never and they did it in at least some of the things. They did it so hyper regionally that is like, okay, we're going to study this 1,000 years in like this tiny little region, and yet 4 other regions had influence and impact on what happened here.
Yeah.
And so they take things so out of context that we don't understand the how, the why, and what impact it has on us today.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, if we can turn history and geography, civics, social studies back into truthful storytelling and explaining what was going on in the world then, what's going on in the world now, and connecting those dots, like we have to be the wayfinders. We have to show them, here's the actual map. Here's where you are on the map. You go here to get there.
And not only that, but you aren't alone in this world. This is, and I'm not talking from a global nationalist standard, right? I don't believe that we should have a global government. I believe that there should be kingdoms in the sense, but that there should be national borders and separation, because it's just, that's how humans work best, right? It is not good for empires to form and start taking over the globe. It's never worked in the
partly because I'm one of the people that, yes, if you're in a country, and I'm not even talking about this country, if you are in a country, especially for an extended period of time, you learn the ways of your culture, your new culture.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to forget about or discredit or ignore your, your heritage.
Yeah.
And so I don't agree with some of the things of our past where it was very much trying to erase and eliminate and just, you're only allowed to speak English kind of stuff. But when you start to like hyper merge and break down all these borders, there has to be then some collective baseline, and doing that then erases those heritage things, those religious beliefs of certain cultures, particularly
the first thing to start educating and to turn things around is take 10 people, 5 conservative, 5 liberal, and ask them one question. Why are you a conservative? Why are you a liberal?
I would start with define conservative, because you've got 5 million different definitions for a conservative, or define liberal. You've got
They
5 million
cannot define it.
Right. So then you're getting into, when you're going into asking the question about why, then you're going, but you don't even know what that is. So why?
Exactly.
Right.
So when you start off with why, right? You start off with why you're a liberal. They'll be like, I don't know. Why you a conservative?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, people who claim to be conservative is only conservative because they tie conservatism to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And those that are not conservative, that's sitting on the Democratic side but have a conservative mindset, doesn't understand. Because why? We never just sit down and say, okay, move titles out of the way. Let's talk values. Let's see what you believe. Let's see what you don't believe, right? I sat down with a progressive for 3 hours. And in that conversation, one of the things that we both agreed on, we didn't believe in abortion. Her thing was, I just don't believe people have to be forced to do whatever they want with their body. When she said that, then I say, but isn't that the same thing what they try to do to our body? And she was like, oh, wow, I never, ever looked at it that way.
Yeah.
All it takes us is a conversation.
Yeah.
And asking more questions than we do actually talking.
Yeah.
When
Right.
we continue to ask questions, and I don't want to say force, but get them to open up, get them to actually think, because they have to provide an answer.
Yeah.
It forces them to actually recognize things and get out of the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Get off of the hamster wheel and actually look at their surroundings and consider something.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad, well, you call it a hamster wheel. I call it tires stuck in mud. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in a rut.
It ain't going nowhere.
It's the government education mindset, though.
Yeah.
They're building a system to create compliant workers. That's it. They don't want us
I'm not gonna, and I told you I'm gonna stir y'all up today. So I'm not gonna just blame government for this, okay? I'm gonna blame the church because we didn't do our part, right?
Yeah.
And then I blame generations for not educating the next generation, which God told us to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
as far as the church is concerned, I think the biggest mistake that the church has made over the last 100 years has been the teaching of blind obedience to authority. Don't ask questions. Don't doubt. Don't, you just have to trust. You have to believe on faith that these things are true, right? What they don't understand is that doesn't just end up staying in the pews. That ends up, that's exactly how the government education system played right into the church played right into their hands, because now their kids are going to school. They hear it.
I actually think I'm listening to a book called Pagan Christianity.
I just read that one not too long ago. I've got it.
I thought you had.
Yep.
I almost think it's the chicken before the egg. I fully believe, because centuries ago the church really was the government. And was it Constantine? Things really started to get into this with Constantine, and even Martin Luther. He did the best he could with what he had, kind of thing. So I'm not throwing him under the bus by any means, but through listening to this book, it's seriously calling us out on not questioning even the rituals we have in our modern churches, from sitting passively in the pew, letting one person be, the controller of information.
Like, here, let me tell you what the Bible says.
And just creating this hierarchy, and they're saying, we follow the Bible, every word, and yet none of how we structure church today, and I'm specifically saying church, not ecclesia, the way we structure church for centuries was literally designed to create submissive workers.
I would definitely go back and agree with you on that, because there has been centuries of the church basically basically telling you to sit down and shut up and sit in the pews and listen, right? So there was definitely a shift. What I'm saying is when the United States started and we had our Great Awakening before the revolution, there was a movement back to, you are self-governing. You have to think for yourself. You have to, I mean, Thomas Jefferson, in his letter to his nephews, was telling them, challenge your faith. Do not just take it blindly. Do not just accept Christianity. You need to ask the questions. You need to deal with the doubts, or you will not have a solid foundation in faith. And because faith is not blind. Faith is based on the evidence of things that have already happened, that have already been, that, you know, the promises of God that have already taken place. We can look back through history and see, yes, he has been the same yesterday, today, and forever, right? And these things, it is not based on what is blind following of an authority figure who has letters after their name, right? It's you ask those questions. Jake was telling me, when, because he's a therapist, but he's also got some certification. So he's got letters after his name, right? But he always tells me his best patients are the ones who do not just take him blindly at his word and actively get involved in their therapy.
They're not influenced by those letters behind his name.
Exactly. They're like, okay, but why does this work? How does that, right? Like, they're asking questions. And then they are more engaged, and he says they heal better and they do better long term. They don't come back as often, if at all, because they are fully engaged in understanding their own health. And so they are willing to do the work that needs to be done. And we've had this shift back. So we had that little bit of space in American history where it was like, okay, now you've got to start questioning again. You can't just take things on blind faith. And now within the last 100 years, we've shifted back to that Constantinian idea of, here's the hierarchy, here's the structure, and the ones on the top are the elites, and you have to trust them, right? And I think we're seeing a shift away from that again in certain areas, especially when you talk about the medical community, when you talk about government now. There's this shift in certain circles where people are like, no, we're not taking this anymore. We've seen the damage you've done. We've seen what's not working. We've seen you keep asking for more money, and you're doing nothing with what you've got.
It's that whole revival concept of the 60s, and that's why that movie that came out recently, and I can't remember the name of it.
Revolution.
Yes. You know, whether this is going to be a macro size, you know, revolution, or you know, micro. I don't know if it's going to be as bigger, or smaller as like the revolution of the 60s. But you know what? The people of the 60s, the hippies, you know, they were free thinkers. They thought for themselves, and they chose, you know, maybe they were misguided, yes or no. You know, not all of them were following righteous things.
I think this revolution going to be spiritual. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a real awakening with the body of Christ, the true ecclesia. If we want to return to freedom, the freedom shift, then it's going to have to be there, because I mean, this was one of the arguments that we had, was that there is an element of truth to the fact that things like abortion and stuff like that, gun control and those types of things are losing arguments, because we no longer have a moral and virtuous citizenry who can understand the deeper, because they are looking at it as a political thing when it is a moral issue. And so this is where we have to start shifting that conversation again. This isn't political in the sense that you're thinking. This is moral. This is a heart issue. This is what is going on in the deepest depths of the human experience and the human culture, that we are seeing this shift towards the destruction of innocent lives, the physical abuse of children, right? Like, I mean, you cannot tell me that transgenderism is it not physical abuse of children. There is no other way to say it, especially when you have organizations like the UN legally trying to shift the definition of pedophilia so that they can be acceptable, so that their peacekeepers can go around the world and continue raping and pillaging wherever they go. Like, and
notice, you guys, that she said legally, not lawfully.
Yes,
there is a difference.
There is definitely a difference.
Oh my God! Would y'all stop with these school words? but that's why we're in this mess, is because we got out of
realizing that words have meaning and
Mhm.
semantics matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that I'm seeing is that everybody in the gay community is not for transgender,
Yeah.
and they have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And so, you
And
know,
Let's make
any
the
feminist
separation.
should too.
Yeah, let's make the
huh?
separation between the gay community and the LGBTQ plus two, whatever. That is that is a religion all of its own. When you put all of that together and you're trying to tribalize a group of people who have literally nothing in common other
Right.
than that they're identifying themselves by their sexuality, right? Whatever that sexuality looks like, that is completely different from a homosexual down the street who doesn't want to who just wants
They
to
just want to mind their own business and live their life.
right. And I can still disagree with that, right? Like I can
Right.
still disagree with that lifestyle, and yet I can still not allow stay out of their business because I don't need to be in that bedroom, right?
In
Like,
other
that's
words,
not
stay
really-
out their bedroom. I can still love you and stay out
Right.
your bedroom.
Right. But then the moment they start intervening in our kids' lives and trying to groom our children, then they've crossed that line. And then you've got to say, okay, that is completely different. That is
Yes.
not
Yep, 'cause
something
they
I'm
brought
going
their
to-
bedroom into the public,
Exactly.
which means that's free game for scrutiny.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be mean, but when
See,
you
I knew you was a hit person talking about open game now. Look at her. See, oh, it's
no, 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 but it's I'm not talking like in terms of debate, in terms of values and morals and our God-given rights.
Mhm.
Once you bring something into the public,
Yeah.
it's public access.
Yeah.
Just like I'm trying to think of a good example, and I don't have one right now.
no, I get what you're saying, but and the
Yeah.
thing about it is, it's about it's not just even about gays. It's about a person that says, "Oh, now I need you to make orgies legal because I love orgies, right? And I want 3 women at one time, and we have to make it a law because my emotions is for all." I mean,
Yeah, my feelings on the subject.
right. So
Mhm.
now I'm bringing my bedroom to make
Mhm.
to the public and says, you need to make this legal for me
Yeah,
because we had a problem when one man married 2 women, right?
Yeah.
Now they got a whole show about it called Sisters,
Sister Wives.
Wives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people got a problem with that. You know,
Yeah. But you'll be told, oh, these are slippery slopes. What were we told, that the transgender issue would never be an issue for kids or anything like that? It was just, these people are just trying to live their lives. Well, guess what? Now we have drag queens in the libraries doing strip shows for our 5 and 6 year olds. That's not okay, right? Like this is when, like you were saying, when it comes into the public, there's a difference between a homosexual couple who are living in their apartment and doing their work and they're completely out of the public square, and the gay pride shows where you've got people in obscene and vulgar costumes, if they're wearing anything at all, ranting and raving through the streets about how they need free love and they need their rights.
Yep.
That
And
is not okay.
Here's what they're neglecting. The ultimate thing that they're neglecting is, in public space, your rights extend as far as another rights start.
Yep.
That's where your rights end.
Yep.
And
But
so
they
on
don't
private
read the
property-
Constitution.
No, I know. And that's where we need to have these conversations and we need to be having these discussions. And yeah, sometimes that means having a discussion with the people that are hardest to talk to.
Yeah.
But it also means starting out like you, Dr. King, do, with asking questions, getting them to think for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that, as soon as we can get their wheels turning, get the cobwebs off and get their wheels turning, that's where we're going to make the most progress.
Exactly, because here's when we look at it. We base everything today on immorality.
Mm.
And because we're basing everything on immorality, and I was telling people, when Obama, the president of the United States, opened his mouth about being okay with immorality, same-sex marriage, and that crazy man, Al Sharpton, gonna say it's like the Civil Rights Act of Black folks.
Yeah.
You open that door of immorality. That's why you got women marrying their animals now.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah,
you
because they're comparing. Al Sharpton was comparing something that is infallible in that human being, right? They're black. They cannot change the nature of their blackness. That's their skin color. God has created them fearfully and wonderfully in his image, in that particular shade of melanin, right? Whereas sexuality, you have a choice, right? That is a choice that you make. And I know we can go into it's a genetic, whatever. They have not found anything to prove that. Nothing in science has proven that this is a genetic, a normal part of life, and they just don't have a choice. So homosexuality is a sin. It was called out by God as a sin, and so therefore that is a choice that they can make.
We know, because of other things in science, we know that because of our hyper exposure, that's my word today, because of our overexposure to toxins of all types in our food, in our environment that we're breathing, we're eating, we're putting on our skin, like all the things.
Yeah.
That causes cellular damage. It can also, and what is DNA? The fact that we know that certain medications can cause things like cleft lip and all these different things. Like, that's why it's on the package insert for that product.
Yeah.
How can we be so naive or wanting to be so ignorant to think that DNA is magically untouchable?
Yeah.
When every other cell in the body can be negatively impacted and is negatively impacted by all of these toxins, even by stress.
Yeah.
Stress can literally change how our body is functioning, whether it's our metabolism, our liver function. So to think that our reproductive system and how our brain is functioning is not impacted, we know that people who, and this might get a little controversial, but we know people who have family members or they themselves were like nonverbal autistic, or had nonverbal autism. I'm trying to be mindful. Or these other things to the extreme, and they heal themselves by detoxing heavy metals and healing their gut.
Yep.
Their whole thought pattern, thought process, view of the world shifted when they healed their bodies and their cellular function.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I'm not a biologist, but I've studied health and wellness for a decade.
Right. And you hate to be stereotypical, but when you see the people in this LGBTQ they are not healthy individuals. You can see them it's very obvious that they are not only are they not choosing a healthy lifestyle, but they are physically not healthy. And so you can see that. Now, there may be exceptions to the rule. There may be, certain health nuts who, for whatever reason,
cellular damage can carry on through at least 3 generations.
Right, exactly. And so there are obvious physical and biological characteristics of this, but that's exactly what you said. Damage. It's damage. It is going against the natural order of things, against the nature that God created in us.
Animals in the animal kingdom. We know that these one-off type situations in nature are not the norm.
Right.
We recognize that. We recognize that, yes, it does happen, but we also recognize that that is not the norm.
Yeah.
But also
because of the brokenness of that happened because of sin, right? Like we were watching what was it called? Something. It's a really neat nature documentary. It was on Amazon for a while. I think something earth, something, and then water. And they were going through and explaining it from a creation perspective, from a God perspective, how nature works, right? And where it goes wrong. And they were talking about this one species, the sea lion. Sea lion? The ones with the elephant seals. Sorry. They were talking about how because of the brokenness of sin, the male elephant seals literally rape the females. Like that's how they manage to keep their harem, right? They're bullies, and they're just abusive animals. And they were talking about this. They were saying that's not okay. Like this was not how it was intended to be, right? Like God didn't create elephant seals to rape their females, right? Like that's not, because of the brokenness of sin, something got damaged, something went wrong, right? And so we are working within the kingdom to restore and redeem nature, restore and redeem political, the political sphere, and the ecclesia, and all of these things we're working, but we can't do that if we don't have an understanding of why it went wrong and how, right?
And what it's supposed to be.
Right. And the normal way it's supposed to be, which is where we get back to the whole idea of absolute truth. There is a way that things are supposed to be, right? And so yeah.
I have not watched it in its entirety yet. One of the groups I'm in has like these weekly missions.
Mm-hmm.
And this week's mission, and I will share the link in our group chat with these two so we can get it out. Del Bigtree had a debate with, I don't remember how to say his name, Neil deGrasse
Tyson. Yeah.
And so far, it is a beautiful example of how debate should be. Now, I'm 19 minutes in, but
it gets fun the more you go in.
I'm sure. But just the fact that they both, were willing to come to this debate and hear each other out and have, with the intention of having a respectful dialogue and show people how debate can be,
yeah,
and walk away and go have a beer together. Like that was their whole premise when they came into this.
Yeah. They do have a beer at the end. It's pretty funny.
Perfect. I mean, they succeeded technically then. But just when we start to look at absolute truth, in the first 19 minutes, Neil does talk about his opinions, his theories on truth. And I do recognize value in how he's perceiving truth. Now, if it were me, I would add a fourth category of, yes, there is an absolute truth, and it's not even religion oriented. Because we do know how reproduction happens, for instance.
Yeah.
And that should be considered an absolute truth. Like we know on Earth, gravity has an effect.
Right.
Whether it's flat Earth or, globe Earth, like there's something that's holding us down to whatever it is, this firmament that we're on.
Yeah.
There are certain things that just are indisputable unless you're on something or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I would definitely encourage everyone to listen to that debate. One, just to consider what both of them are saying, and then walk away with it, like, and really, ponder it. Any of, everything we're saying, look at it. Yes, we're looking through our own perspective and our own lens, but when we're also looking at like the greater picture of things and how things have functioned so far in the world, what's broken, getting back to what absolute truth is really key.
Yeah. And you look at the you look at the scriptures, how it talks about like the Proverbs. Okay, those are guidelines, right? They're not hard and fast rules, but they're basically saying if you do this, your life will be better because it's the right thing to do, right? Like if you what's some examples? Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. If you decide to laze around in bed all day, that's okay. That's your choice. You can choose that, right? But it's not beneficial for you. It is not, or in the New Testament when Paul was it Paul? or Peter that God was talking to, where he was like, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are beneficial for me to do, right? So I can choose a lifestyle, that any sort of lifestyle, and yet there is a way in which it is most beneficial for me. So, like when we talk about families, there are people who are single parents who have adopted a bunch of children because they love kids and they just want to give broken children a home, right? And I firmly believe that they are giving their children the love and the pointing their children to God, and they're doing it out of a sense of love. It does not negate the fact that the best way is to have a husband and a wife, and children.
Mhm.
But there are amazing single mothers who are parenting their children and doing the best. Yeah, exactly. I know some who are doing their absolute best, and they are fighting for their children's souls, and they are prayerfully considering how to raise their children in the best way, right? And God will honor that. He says, I am a husband to the widow, I am a father to the fatherless, right? So he fills in those gaps, right? But again, it does not negate the fact that there is a way that God set
It's
it
like
up.
trying to make the argument that bottle feeding is just as good as breastfeeding.
Right,
And
exactly.
fed is
There's
best.
another
The
one.
whole philosophy is fed is best. No,
Yes.
fed is good.
Yeah,
Breast is best.
exactly.
Why?
Because our bodies were innately created
Right.
to give that baby exactly what it needs when it needs it. It can
Do you
literally change formulation
Yes.
based on the saliva feedback of the
Right.
baby. If the baby's sick or if the baby's lacking in XYZ
Yes.
nutrition, it will literally change its own formula
Yes.
to match the baby's needs.
Think
That is
about-
innate design.
Think about when you kiss your baby. Obviously a new mom, they just cover their baby's face with kisses, right? Every one of those kisses is actually taking in information that will revert to will bring to the brain the information that's needed, and it will actually change the formula. Just kissing your child, like, how amazing did God create
And it's
that?
another reason why when a child is sick, we recommend skin to skin contact
Yes.
because their bodies were designed to read mother's body,
Mm-hmm.
or just really an adult, parental unit body, because dads can do it too.
Yep.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what about dads?
Yeah, dads
Yeah,
can do it too.
And self-regulate then based
Yeah.
on the feedback they get. And so if they have a fever, their fever can regulate based on being connected to our body, our skin,
Yeah.
and being regulated.
Yeah.
I mean,
when men become dads for the first time, there is actually a shift in their biology that it actually, it's kind of funny. It lowers their IQ, but it creates a more nurturing tendency.
Wait, hold up. Wait a minute. It do not lower
Yes,
IQ.
it does. Yes, it
No.
does. They did studies on this to see with the
I don't listen to no studies. I'm a genius when it comes to my children.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that it doesn't make you a genius. It just increases the emotional quotient as well. So there is a bonding that happens.
there's kind
Now-
of a shifting from
Right.
IQ to EQ, that
Yes.
emotional intelligence.
Yes, which doesn't make you any less smart. It just gives you a more well-rounded intelligence. Let's put it that way, shall we?
Well,
And-
I
and
guess you could
guys
say
are not
that.
always the most emotional creatures
Right.
in the world.
But when that
Say that
doesn't
again?
happen, but when that doesn't happen between a father and his child, we don't look at that and say, "Oh, well, he's just a man." No, we say there's something that went wrong, right? There's something that was broken in that. When a father abuses his children, that's wrong, right? When a mother neglects her child, that is wrong. Or when they consider aborting a child, right? There's a brokenness there. We don't look at that and say, "Oh, that's perfectly normal." It's not. There's nothing normal about that.
Mhm.
So-
Oh, well, I've got something to say about that because we are some emotional folks.
Yeah, we are.
We, as men, we cry at movies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We emotional We are not always a
if
villain.
you've been raised or taught, self-reflected enough to open up,
Yeah.
because so much
We don't
in our
have to
culture-
open up.
No, but so much in our culture teaches men to toughen up,
Although
wipe
it's
away those
shifting,
tears.
yeah, now it's
Yeah.
shifting more towards the emasculation of men, but
Yeah.
there's a balance, right? Yes, men are the tougher ones. They're the stronger sex. I mean, that's in general, that's the way it is. It doesn't mean they're more intelligent. It doesn't mean they're more spiritual. It doesn't mean any of that. And it doesn't mean that
But
they
we
use that
are.
strength to be toxic either. There's a balance. Women are more nurturing, but I tend to not be as cuddly as probably a lot of mothers are. I'm like, I've had my I need my space. I've got, but
I will say yes.
Yeah.
There is this serious level of sensory overload
Yes.
with being the primary caregiver
Yeah.
and the connected caregiver. There
Yeah.
is
Whatever.
even this morning with my son, like he was trying to be snuggly, and I'm like, oh, no. Last night we were watching a movie,
Mhm.
and like he kept moving,
Yeah.
and so was moving the blanket, and I'm like, sit still, or you gotta scoot over because you're moving the blanket, and I can't handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
The definition. So for me, the definition of cuddle is like, resting, no movement. You're just holding. Not for my kids. No, cuddle means let's squirm all over mom's lap. Let's jump on her belly. Let's do whatever it takes to make her as uncomfortable as possible until she moves, right? And it's like, that's not cuddling to me. But at the same time, there are times when I'm not sensory overloaded, when that's perfectly fine and I can handle that, right? And I'm giving the kids what they need. And so it's just this idea of we have certain giftings as men and women are different fundamentally, and so there are similarities to them, but yes, women are the more nurturing, right? Men are the more
Okay.
protecting and
by design,
and,
right?
and
Yeah,
providing.
Literally, our bodies were the ones that were designed to create and grow this thing, and then also to feed this thing.
Yes. Yeah.
This baby.
No,
See,
I think
it's
about
your
that all the
job
time,
to
like,
do that.
right, when I'm like just sitting, and I'll just have this passing thought and be like, oh my gosh, I'm growing a child, like it just hits you hard sometimes.
There's
Where, like,
this
God created,
sense of awe and
yes,
holy moly,
and to have, like, they just did a Dr. Phil episode not too long ago where they had the transgender issue, and all of these men who want to be women are talking about how, well, I'm a, what do they call it? I can't remember. It was like, I'm a non-binary person and I was able to have a kid in it, but I'm not a female. And I'm like, yes, you are. You had a uterus. You had all the prerequisite parts and you created a child. Now, whatever's going wrong with your brain matter is a completely different situation, but you are a woman. That does not change because you've just chosen to feel like you're non-binary, like this is, and then these men who are like, well, you're abusing our feelings about, we're women too, and we should be. It's like, but every time you guys come into the conversation about being women or being non-binary or whatever you want to call it, women lose their value because you are devaluing what they give to the world. The creation of life is one of the most amazing things that a woman has been given by God. The ability to have that child be formed. Now, obviously, men are part of that. There is an element of the male but the woman is the one who has the womb and carries that child for 9 months and feels every bit of that child's growth and development.
And I think the easiest thing that people
we're ignoring you, Dr. King.
Yes, we are.
I know y'all are.
The thing that I think is easiest for people to grasp, especially the population that's older, that is not on social media, because that's where the majority of this is happening. And that's why they're so sheltered into thinking that certain parties are just like, the JFK era party, because they're sheltered and they're protected from that.
Right.
And it's not a good thing, but is athletics. We fought so hard, you know, as a you know, not you and me necessarily, but women
Yeah.
have fought so hard to be treated equally, to be given equal opportunity, to all these different things. And now men are stepping back into the women's sports
Yeah.
with their male bodies.
Yeah.
Dominating and taking over these women's sports that
Yeah.
they fought so freaking hard for generations to get.
Yeah.
And now men are coming back into them. Women don't have the sports anymore.
I think that's the key point though. They fought to get it. They already had those rights. If we had acknowledged that women have equal rights with men, then we wouldn't have had to make this a legal government get granted thing, right? And I think that's where we went wrong. It's just like the argument that I had about homeschooling. We fought from the legal perspective to get the right to homeschool. We asked the government for permission to do what is already ours to do. Women already had those rights. Women were already voting in the 17 and 1800s. Women were already owning property and being businesswomen and taking part in things that weren't considered the norm for women in a sense, but they were already doing that. The moment the government steps in and starts granting these rights, that's when we lose, because this is the logical outworking. Who's next? Who next gets to trample over the rights of others in order to get their rights met, right? Because that's how the government does it. They don't care about granting God-given rights. They care about choosing who they decide deserves rights, right? And so this was the problem. Women taking this to the government to ask permission for it. We didn't have to do that. We just needed to go back to the original foundational principles and say, we already have these rights. We're not asking for permission. We're doing it.
Right.
But wait.
Devil's advocate for a second, like I do recognize that there was so much, and there still is in some areas, so much discrimination against women that I can imagine them feeling like their only option was to get a lawful protection from the discrimination. So I'm not
protection, yes, but I think they took it too far to the extent that they demanded that the government give them this, right? Not just the protection.
First of all, hold on. I gotta come in now because number one, what's the word I want to use? Men's was never in women's sports, first of all. So we didn't just come back into their sports. We was never in their sports. To the fact where if a man did anything with a woman when it came to sports, jumping rope or whatever, we was scrutinized. We was talked about. Did I
come back into women's sports?
Yes, you said come back in.
Okay, because I did. That's not what I meant to say. So
okay,
2023 is like the only year, or all of a sudden we've seen a massive increase in
testicular injuries.
Yeah,
right. But first of all, I know you didn't mean to say back in, but we was never in.
Right. Yep. No, I know.
The only reason men's was around women's sports, I'm gonna be honest, from a man's perspective. The only way a man was around women's sports or watching women's sports was to try to get a phone number. that was it. We didn't want to play their games, huh?
Do men watch women's basketball?
Of course. I mean, we didn't want to. I think the problem came when it comes to men and women is somebody put in your head you had to be just like that man. And you know, even the Bible says that a woman would desire, right, that position, but you didn't have to have that position. You could have been a woman, play your sports, be recognized as a beautiful queen, and treated a certain way. But when you got a man who's now bipolar schizophrenic and saying that he's a woman and has to play women's sports, and you know where they got that from. You ever saw the movie where the black guy, he was a basketball player and he couldn't make it in the NBA. He did something, he couldn't make it, so he dressed up as a woman and he played in the women's league.
No.
Yeah, it's a movie out like that.
Oh, wow.
That happened a while ago, before the whole transgender thing. And you know, movies warn us what's coming. And so he dressed
are they
up.
predicting, or are they
programming us for it? Yeah.
And so
Why they're called programs.
I know they programming us. And so when you start to look at a certain thing when it comes to women, like Sarah said, women rights was already there. Yeah. When you go to the courts and you put the system in, now you get to change what you call women rights.
Yeah.
And now a man right to think he's a woman and a woman right to think you can listen. Again, I can think I'm white, but I won't get white privilege as what they say white privileges is.
Yeah.
I can't go to a college, and I was just looking at some numbers where white students are more likely to get a certain scholarship than a black student would. I can't go to them who's giving out the scholarship and say, you know what, today I feel like I'm white. Can I get that money?
Did you hear about that? I don't remember which state this was in, but a county board member, I believe it was a county board supervisor who came out as a Indian woman. It's a Republican. He's a Republican, right? So he's trying to make a statement, and he literally he had a press release. He went full metal jacket. I don't know whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure the analogy, but he went full on, and he changed. Well, he didn't have his identity changed in legally, but he basically said, "This is me now. This is how I'm going to live." And he talked to his family beforehand and everything. He's getting death threats because he's mocking the LGBT community, and he's going, "But you can't tell me that because this is me. This is who I am. This is my feeling."
Not say to deny me that.
Right, exactly. You're denying my identity. You are abusing me. You are, and And it's so fascinating because they had a whole forum where these people were getting up and just lambasting him, calling for his resignation. And they're like, and so it's like, wait, you just said your feelings are the only things that matter, that everybody else has to fall in line with what you feel about who you are. And now when somebody comes back and says, hey, this is who I am, in order to prove to you that this is absolutely insane, right, you're doing the exact opposite of what you are claiming you have the right to do. Mm-hmm. And it's just,
you know what's funny? Yeah. My boyfriend actually made a very similar comment the other day that in regard to a certain somebody getting endorsed.
Wait, your boyfriend?
You know I've had one for a long time.
I did not. I need his social security number, his DNA, his fingerprint. I need everything.
So I can take him.
You see how she's looking, right?
Yeah,
I need that. So I can do a full background check. Now go ahead. What's his boyfriend say?
Basically, in terms of, a certain somebody who's dressing up as a young female getting endorsed by these companies, that he should, without shaving beard, without, blah, 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 just putting on a dress and saying he is, he identifies that way, getting a whole bunch of endorsements and money and being like, JK, and running off with the money. Mm-hmm. It's just like, how is that any different? And I'm not condoning it, but I'm also like, when it comes to women's sports, are getting these endorsements, doing it for popularity. I just saw on YouTube, I watched this weird eclectic combination of videos. YouTube recommended I watch this video on, it was a Dr. Phil thing. This woman literally made herself blind because she identified as a blind person, and that she should have been born blind. And so she had this quack doctor, literally, not what people are calling natural medicine doctors, but this literal quack doctor, psychologist, help her put drain cleaner in her eyes to make her blind.
Yep.
And just this whole messed up thing of, instead of identifying, okay, I feel this way, but I'm not supposed to be this way. So
Right.
why? How? Maybe let's address like the root cause.
Yeah.
We're just addressing the symptom.
Yeah.
And we're actually catering to the symptom as being right when the symptom is actually just the body screaming for help.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's look at it from a spiritual standpoint.
Yeah. It's ultimately it's
Mhm.
our spirit crying out to God for help because
Yeah.
we've
And so-
rejected him, and so therefore
Right.
Yeah.
And Amber, I'm doing the wedding. But anyway, let's go back to the.
I would not be opposed to that.
Oh, that'll be a fun wedding.
I know.
I'm in.
Oh my God, I can't wait. But no, if you have, I'm giving y'all some homework since y'all make me read and everything. You guys have to watch Uncle Tom 2.
What is it?
Uncle Tom
Oh,
2.
I've already watched it, so I did my homework.
Overachiever. I mean,
It explains everything we're talking about right now. It explains how the whole society is. See, if we can eliminate God,
Yep.
then what they think is they can eliminate the nature of God.
Yep.
But you cannot eliminate the nature of God because it's already planted in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
So you're gonna always
cell of
feel
our
something.
being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're gonna
think about
always-
DNA. Like, there is literally so much about DNA that is there. His fingerprints are all over it.
Exactly. So when you look at it, right? When we look at this going on, instead of counseling a demon, why not cast that demon out?
Yeah.
You know, instead of entertaining that demon, why not cast that demon out? Because I don't care who you are. If Sarah would cheat on Jake, it's a part of Sarah that would feel guilty,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
So, two people of the same sex, somebody feeling something, some kind of guilt or something.
Yeah.
Until you do it long enough where the guilt goes away. But you feel you can hold hands with somebody else and you start feeling guilty. You ain't even got to go.
I've had a couple rare dreams where I was like, we watched a romantic comedy or something, and I was like, I had a dream, and I was like, I woke up feeling like I just cheated on him. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yep, I know what you mean.
You just feel like you gotta scrub it off somehow. Like, let me take a shower.
So no matter what you do, you can move the Bible, you can shut every church down, but there's a piece of God that's in all of us that will let us know what's normal and what's not normal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, until we decide to go back to our moral compass and put things back in its rightful place, it's gonna always be messed up.
Well, and how do you communicate that to the upcoming Generation Z, who's been raised in a nihilistic society where there is no meaning and purpose? You are balls of meat floating in the universe. You have nothing to offer, nothing to give, and so therefore you might as well just do whatever you feel, right?
Well, you have to oh, wait a minute. You have to I'll call her right back. One of my baby girls is calling from Mississippi. But you have to look at it this way. I gotta be willing to go outside of my household to grab a young person to let them know that you was made in the image of God. And because you are a woman, God gave you one of the most awesome responsibilities, and that is to carry life.
Yeah.
As a young man, God gave you an awesome responsibility, and that is to produce life.
And protect it.
And protect it, right?
Yeah.
And provide for it, right? Yeah. And so when we begin to give them purpose, then they'll love their life. But if you got a generation of no purpose, and they're steady being told they have no purpose, and steady
They
being
still,
told.
they still look for purpose. They just look for it in all of the wrong ways, because that is our like God-given desire to find purpose and meaning and mission, right? Like every human being searches for that. You look
Which
at a
is exactly
2-year-old.
why I incorporate that into my workshop.
Yeah.
Because we know inherently there's this gut feeling, this yearning desire to do something.
Yeah. Well,
to
look
be
at
somebody.
look at a 2-year-old, or whenever a child starts talking, what is one of their first questions? Why, right? And you can only say because for so long before they're demanding more, because they need to know why, right? For
Right.
everything. And not only that's just setting them up to know why me. Why did God create me, right?
And
So that's
and the funny,
this idea of. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say there was this meme, and it's like the that 50s style painting where the mom is wearing this pretty little dress, and she's sitting there doing her chores and stuff, and her daughter comes up to her and says, "Mom, I'm a boy today," and she goes, "No, you're not." Like, that's how we need to be responding. Like, "No, you're not, and here's why." Right? You don't just stop at the "no, you're not." You go, "Here's why," because this is the way God created you, fearfully and wonderfully. There is nothing about you, not this idea of, oh, you're perfect just the way you are. No, because that's a lie too, because we aren't perfect. We're all broken human beings. But when you're going, this is why God created you this way, fearfully and wonderfully, because he has a mission and a purpose for your life. And if you veer from that mission and purpose, you will never be satisfied, right?
Yes.
And what you did really points to part of the solution too, is you explained the answer, no, you're not, and you followed it up with the why.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when we don't follow it up with the why, it feels as a child as not affirming our thoughts and our feelings. And so when we explain, then it helps the kids then connect the dots as to, you can dress up as a boy and pretend to be a pirate or whatever, because you're in play mode.
Yep.
You're acting.
Yep.
But the true essence of who you are is this divinely created woman. Yeah. That's the ticket. Like, we can play and pretend, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I watched this lady, she was ministering, and she said,
wait, ladies are allowed to minister?
Yes, in my book, yes.
Yes.
You mean they can get up behind a pulpit and preach?
Yes, because the Holy Spirit is neither male nor female.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
Did Sarah know I was going to do that?
Yes, I did.
You laughed pretty quickly.
Yeah, I knew exactly where it was going, because I was like, yeah, there's a controversial topic we can talk about.
I think y'all trying to set me up, but anyway.
Gonna back you in a corner, Dr. King.
I know, but she said she went to Christian schools, elementary and junior high.
Yeah.
So when she got to high school, she told her friend that went to middle school with her and that was part of the church, don't call me by my name. Call me by these initials, DK.
Okay.
So all the kids at the school called her DK. On her high school jersey, Letterman jacket, it said DK. The teachers and principals, they all called her DK.
Yeah.
Right? She got sick one day, and her mama came to the school to look for her at the nurse's station. The nurses didn't really know her real name. They just knew her as DK. So they talked, the mom and the teacher and the nurse talked. They finally realized who it was. They got her and went home. After she got healed, her mom called her in the room, looked her dead in her eye and says, first of all, I don't care what they call you at school, but your diploma better not come back saying DK.
Yeah.
And then she says, the reason is because God gave me and your fathers the right to name you.
Yep.
We the only one has that right. We the only one has the ability to call you or to name you who you are and what your name stands for.
Yeah.
And it's just like God. God is the only one that has the right to call us by anything that he wants.
And what
And
he says is, I've called you by name, you are mine.
You are mine, right? And that means I sent you to earth with a purpose and a plan. I didn't send you here to come against what I sent you to do.
I've had such a similar conversation with my son because he hates his middle name.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes he says he wishes his first name was this other name that's really similar, but
Bella
and then
does the
I
same
kind
thing.
of tell him the story of how he got his name, and that he was actually, we had picked out a different name, and then when he was born, we realized, no, that is not the name you're meant to have.
Yeah.
And it was literally the next morning, because he was born at like 1 a.m. It wasn't until the next morning I woke up with his name put on my heart by God. When I looked it up, it means healer.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is who you are. And so I'm like, literally God put on my heart to name you your name.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no other choice.
Yeah.
Like, this is who God designed you to be. Now, what that manifest, like, I know some God people don't like the word manifest, but what that ends up turning out as, what that manifests into, may not be like a doctor.
Yeah.
Like I help heal people, and I don't have those letters behind my name.
Right.
I have a BA behind my name, but that's it.
There's so many different ways. In my depth program, we talk about the different ways that what's the word? Mission or purpose can manifest in our life, right? And like we did that with all of our kids when we named them. We chose the name based on God putting it on our hearts, and this is your name. And I remember the most impactful one was Luke, because we'd been going back and forth about a bunch of different names and everything. And I was reading in the book of Luke one day, the first part where Zacharias gets the name from God to name his son John, and he's given John's mission on earth. And I'm reading through this mission, and basically like it's not a safe mission, right? Like your son is going to die someday, basically, is what he's told. Like he's going to die for this, right? And I was reading through that and going, oh my gosh, like this is, and I just kept feeling God pressing on me. This is his name. This is Luke is his name. And it wasn't because of the gospel writer, but it was because of that passage in Luke that was just like, this is a mission. I'm going to call and it was for all of our children. I'm going to call your children out for something big. And their mission and purpose is not always going to, I don't want to say end well, but it's not going to be pleasant. It's not always going to, make them popular. It's going to hurt sometimes. Right. And you're going to be that mom who's like Mary, who's pondering everything in her heart, and just that sword goes into her heart because she knows her son is meant for something bigger, and possibly leading to their martyrdom, but it wasn't so much that was, oh yeah, is Luke gonna, be a martyr on, no, not necessarily, but the idea of he's going to have a mission in his life that God's going to call him to, that he's going to follow on faith, not blind faith, but follow on faith because God called him to it. And it is not always going to feel good. And it's not always going to take him to places he will want to be necessarily, but he's going to choose to be because this is where God's got him. And yeah, like that was such a huge impact. And then that first year of life, we didn't even know if he was going to live because he was so sick all the time. And so here I'm like, that was the child, my firstborn son, secondborn child, where I am literally being challenged by God. Are you going to surrender him to me for the mission I have for him? Or are you going to hold him so tightly and keep him from me? And it was just like, that was huge, like, I've had impactful moments with every one of our children's names, but that one was like, that was the turning point. These children are not mine. They've been gifted to me for a time, but they belong to God. And everything that I should be doing is pointing them to Christ.
And that's one of the things, like with my son Jeremiah, I remind him, you are a leader.
Mm,
You are a man of God. You are a leader.
yeah.
And we pray every morning when he go to school.
Yep.
And so, when we look at it, when we don't do what we're supposed to do at home, right? Train a child in the
Yeah.
way they should go. And you don't train them by telling them, you train them by living it. You train
Yep.
them by doing it yourself.
Yep.
And so, so with society, we just got to get the society to turn back to God, because it's no other way.
Yeah.
There's no scientist, there's no psychologist, there's nobody can write a book that's going to turn it around until they surrender to God. I mean, and that's just the bottom line. And so
no government program's going to solve their problems. No government granted privileges are going to help them fix what's actually broken.
Right. No Democrat, no Republican, none of that. And so what we have to do is we just have to tell the true ecclesia, it's time for you to stand up and speak out.
Yep.
Because if you don't, they might die and end up in hell.
Yeah.
But their blood is going to be required of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. And so when we look at it for what it is, we
need to stop being cowards. We need to stop running away from the battle, I guess, for lack of a better term. I remember listening to historian David Barton. He's part of the
I love David
Original
Barton.
Intent. Yeah, we've talked about that before. But anyway, he was giving a speech on this concept of running to the roar was the title. And I don't know if you've heard this one, but it was so good. He talks about how lions hunt. So the female lions are the ones who are the hunters, right? The male lions are the ones who are too big and bulky, and they can't run very fast, and so they seem to be the least dangerous, right? But how the female lions hunt is the male lion will roar, and the animals will come towards or will go away from that roar, right? Because that roar is big and intimidating. So they automatically think, oh, this is, that's the scary part. They run away from the roar and right into the female lions' mouths. What he says is, no, we need to run toward the big and bulky male lions who are roaring at us, right? And that could be anything at this point. The LGBTQ community, the woke mob, all of the systemic racism and all of this stuff. We need to be running towards those battles, not away from
government schools.
Yeah, exactly. We need to stop running away from that, because every time we do, we are giving more and more ground, and we are literally throwing ourselves into the hands of the actual, right?
Which is exactly why when I'm working with people who want to create a private association or a private ministry for their kids' education, or just for general kids education, I love, it makes my heart sing when they say that they're still also fighting and going to school board meetings and stuff, because I'm living it. I'm living proof that there are people out there who don't have their own choice in where their kids are being educated. I'm purposely ignoring you. They don't have that choice, because that choice is being made by somebody else. And so we still need to fight for the public education system to be as correct as it can be, given its corruption. Because one, our kids, if we have the liberty to educate our own kids at home, are going to be living in the real world with them. And there are people whose kids deserve to have us fight for them. They're not a lost cause just because their parents can't find a way to get them out of that system. And those kids deserve us fighting for them. And so yes, we need to run for that roar.
There's actually an organization that was started. I've got it bookmarked, but I might have to share that. But people who are in the public school system as teachers, if you are trying to do your best for these students and stand in the gap while you're fighting to find other options for education, there's an organization that's working to get teachers out of the teachers unions because they don't actually have to be there. And the NEA is the most corrupt political organization, and it is
Most
completely
unions are these days, anyways.
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. But they're giving
The
other.
ones in education are
They're horrible.
The ones that pertain to jobs that relate to kids.
Yes.
Because daycare is just as bad, if not
Yep.
more toxic.
Yep.
I won't name names, but the supervisor I had for my entire student worker position through college,
Mhm.
she was like the president or whatever of
Mhm.
one of the university unions.
Yeah.
And she went on sabbatical more often than she was at work
Yeah.
to go play this role
Yeah.
and con people into joining unions. And
Yeah.
one of their missions in Minnesota was to get daycare providers a union and get them in the union.
Yep.
And it's like, and I just, being a student at that time, I sat down, shut up, and minded my business because who am I to tell a grown up,
Yeah. Yeah.
who technically has an authority position over me,
Mhm.
anything about something that's not related to my job?
Yeah.
And I mean, I politely asked questions if she started talking about it,
Yeah.
but I never really showed my cards
Yeah.
because I knew that I could use that information someday.
Yeah.
It is so toxic, the
Yeah.
con games that they play.
Yep. Yep.
I fully respect what unions were when they started.
Yep.
I can have respect for that and acknowledge the toxic crap pile, really,
Mhm.
that they are now. Every single union, whether it's
well-
HVAC, whether it's plumbing, electrician, education,
Well,
anything, they're
what-
all crap now.
What were unions originally? How were they originally formed? By the people, right? Now they're so enmeshed with the government that there is no difference between them, right? They
There's
do.
a small set of leaders in the union that tell everyone else how it's going to
Yep.
be.
Yep.
And that's also how we have crap like OSHA too.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
they wanted so much protections afforded to them, promised to them, that now it's become a monster. That people cannot actually do their jobs efficiently and effectively because their job is deemed so dangerous that they have to do all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Roofers, and there's mining ones where literally the second you step onto a step ladder, even if it's one step to throw something in a dumpster, you have to rope up.
Did they have a union when they made the what was the big French building? Oh gosh, it burned down just recently. Notre Dame. Did they have a union when they created Notre Dame? I mean, come on.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We've done well without unions for thousands of years, and now all of a sudden we need them and we can't do it without them. It's ridiculous. I was in the nurses union. They did squat for me, except for taking out $25 a month from my paycheck. Like that was they did absolutely nothing. And I had serious issues with several of the employees at the time who were literally taking advantage of the fact that I was the new employee, and they were giving me the long wing of where there's 30 patients.
They were making you do the grunt work.
They were making me do the grunt work.
And unions now are nothing more than fraternities and sororities, hazing the newbies.
Yep.
I never thought about that till you gave that example.
Yeah, because
that's exactly what they did to my dad twice.
Yeah.
When the business that he worked for was convinced to go union, one was blackmail, one was change in ownership. Twice he was laid off. My dad was the person who could do like 4 or 5 different people's jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe with a helper because you can't physically be on both sides of a duct, whatever, But they would hire my dad to do like 4 or 5 people's jobs, pay him a little bit more to do all of that, and he would still get it done faster and better.
Yeah.
But then they would lay him off to hire 11 people, having all this expense to pay these people $20 whatever an hour, instead of paying one person a little bit more because he's a master at all of them.
Yeah.
It's just I have zero good things to say about unions.
Yeah, well, and certain unions, they demand that you have certain types of insurance for malpractice and stuff. And it's like, okay, whoa. Malpractice means you are practicing poorly or not at all, right? So that means there's problems with that right from the get-go. but there are actually other insurances, liability insurances and stuff that are way cheaper that you don't have to get through your union, and you don't even have to be part of the union.
Well,
because
and look
they
at
do
how little, if at all, the union stood by medical workers.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh my
the
gosh.
last 4 years.
They did nothing.
No, exactly. If anything, they stood by the employers.
Yeah.
The exact enemy that they were designed to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
If that is not prime example, and that's regardless of people's individual personal convictions on what is best for their health, their job is to defend the rights of the employees.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they turned their back on it and stomped all over it.
Oh, totally. And then you have all of this idea of these unions encouraging these teachers to strike when conservative values are being inserted into the school, and it's just like, why are we paying you for doing nothing? Like, and then they're complaining about all these, we're not getting enough benefits, we're not getting enough pay, and you're not doing your job. In fact, you're doing
like
really
my
bad
like
job
my
of
old
indoctrinating
supervisor.
children.
Yep,
So-
my old supervisor. She was literally gone more than she was at work, and yet she expected A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's like, for what? I was doing as a student worker, and I credit it. Like, this is definitely a God thing. I did not only my undergraduate student workers position for the majority of my 4-ish years in that position. I also did a lot of the graduate students' work because the department didn't have money to hire a grad student too. And then when she was gone, I was also doing her work.
Yeah.
And I would have to have basically the office managers log in information and send emails out to faculty and staff.
Yeah.
The most elitist in this academia world.
Yeah.
From her email.
Yeah.
And with the office of the email of the office manager, because if they knew it was coming from the student worker, they wouldn't, they'd
ignore it. Yeah. Yeah.
But I credit this situation because it taught me so much about integrity and work ethic, and really just how toxic that other stuff is.
Yeah, for
It
sure.
also gave me a lot of skills on how to create procedure manuals and organization and all these other things that I wouldn't have had an opportunity to do because I was a grunt worker as a student worker. Most of the student workers never even got to touch the stuff I got to touch.
Yeah.
They were only entrusted to deliver mail across campus.
Yeah.
Much.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, I did that stuff too, but when you show up and show your work ethic, that's when you're going to get the benefits, because
I'm not showing nothing. Just give me mine.
But I mean, because I showed up for 4 years in the same department doing all this stuff, I was practically handed a job after graduation.
Yep.
Yes, I still had to technically go through interviews and stuff, but I was pretty much the only person they interviewed.
Right.
Good job.
Yeah, because they already knew you were qualified and more than qualified. Yeah.
But see, me, I did it where I made my boss. I wanted their job, so what I did was I'd be like, "Sit down, I got it for you. What you need me to do?" and I learned everything that they was doing, right? Everything they was doing, and I just waited on my time.
Yeah.
And my time came when they had got sick, and it was the beginning of the month, and it was inventory. It was inventory time, and it was the end of the month, all at one, right?
Yeah.
So the owner and the district manager came in, and when they came, I had it all done.
Nice.
Because they was coming to do it, and when they saw the paperwork all nice and neat and everything was accurate, they was like, "Who did this?" I was like, "I did."
Yeah.
They said, "You know how to do this?" I said, "I've been doing it for the last 5 months," and they was like, "What?" And,
we're twinning, because I would do similar.
Oh yeah.
I didn't take one task and expand it to fill my work hours.
Yeah.
I did my things as quickly and efficiently and correctly as possible.
Yeah.
to take more on then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like exactly what you did. You took on additional things
Yeah.
to show your worth, your value.
Well,
When I worked
I
as a
always had a
CNA and
takeover
then-
spirit.
Yeah, when I worked as a CNA and then as an RN, I did the same thing. I did over and above. You know, a lot of the nurses, they'd go in, hand them pills, and they'd leave. You know, they'd do a cursory assessment. I did, you know, I made sure I spent time with each patient, and it was hard because a lot of days, you know, just you don't have a whole lot of time when you're working in that field. But I took that time, and I remember several times there were patients that would have been moved. They had been moved from the regular floor to the hospice, and their family members would call for me to come and tend to them on, you know, in their last moments, because I went that extra mile with them when they needed me most, right? And so I remember specifically one family actually asked me to come in and sing Amazing Grace to them as their mom was dying, because I had taken such good care of their mother that they knew that they wanted that atmosphere when she passed.
Yeah.
And so that was how, like, that's how I didn't know any other way. I remember people saying, oh, just, you know, just take this shortcut or just do this. And like,
Probably because our parents instilled in us the, you know, the integrity behind a hard day's work.
You don't cut corners. You don't take shortcuts, because that gets you into trouble. I remember watching when as a kid there was a oh gosh, it was like one of those claymation shows. What was it called? It was about this board game, this kid who goes into this board game. Trying to remember what it was called. But anyway, there's like he's learning certain things because he's just like, he's like this bully and he's just not a nice kid. And he goes into this board game and there's a certain part where he ends up taking the shortcut, and it gets him into so much trouble and he almost actually loses the game. But that was what I grew up with. You don't do that. Because a shortcut is not short. It doesn't get you where you need to go, and it can actually get you further into a hole. And like you said, there's no integrity behind it. There's no honesty.
Mm-hmm.
People notice that. They see that.
Right. And
yeah.
I taught one of my classes through my organization. I taught the people, don't look at the 90 days probation period as they getting over on you.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the 90-day probation period saying, oh, I'm gonna suck up all this information, because the one who has the most information is the most valuable to the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so
not only the most information, but the most application for it, right?
Yeah.
They're actually
and
working.
while there is no such thing as job security, you create your own job security by your work ethic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I say, all the time, the boss might not know you doing it, but don't worry about it, because the time is going to come. They're going to realize that you're the one that's doing it. Yeah. And so just learn.
Yeah.
This is your learning period. You got 90 days to learn.
That was what I was going to say, was just being teachable, right? Like being teachable is one of the best ways that you can make that mark, right? When you're showing that curiosity and saying, okay, I know this part of the job, but this part I'm not sure about, help me figure this out because I want to do the best I can, right? You're opening yourself up to being indispensable, right? To your boss or to whatever company you're working for or whatever. And it does make a difference. I mean, you look at these, what was it? The people are noticing this in the job markets. They are what was it? There was a law firm that refuses to take Harvard or Yale students because they're so dang woke that all they do is sit around and complain and play victim. And they're like, we're not doing that. When you come into our law firm, we have a name to uphold and a job to do. And if you can't do that job, we're not going to accept you. And we know that because we see the way that you behave. We see the policies and the switch in the mission of these schools. And no longer are they schools of integrity. They're schools of wokeness and stupidity.
These, as well as every law school that I'm aware of, and beyond what I'm aware of, because I've heard other people say this, no law school in this country, to our knowledge, actually teaches the Constitution.
Exactly.
They teach constitutional theory and precedents.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep.
And so these top schools already are failing our country, our nation, because they're not teaching the foundations. Yes, Constitution is a class you can take, But
Yeah.
who's going to take that kind of elective?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, when you look at it, because my thing is you have to be fat. You have to be faithful, available, and teachable. So you can
Yeah.
steal that, Amber, when you teach in a class now. You know, tell them you got to be fat. You got to be faithful, available, and teachable.
Yep,
That's
exactly.
that's the only way you're gonna have success.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. When you come through the door thinking you know everything, then you're scaring me, and I need to get rid of you real fast.
Oh yeah, for sure. And or you don't know everything and you just sit around and laze around and don't do what you're supposed to do. Like that's
Yes.
that's why we need to teach kids when you're looking for jobs. Look at the job description. Know what your job is supposed to be so that when you go out and you start learning it, you're not taking those shortcuts. You're not trying to, figure out ways around what your responsibilities are because you're already going to have one over on most of the applicants because you're going to know that job inside and out before you even get into it.
I can't.
Yes.
I used to help after a little bit after I got my job from graduation,
Mm-hmm.
and then more so after I had my son and started working from home. I helped a handful of people write their resumes because they too had no idea. And
Yeah.
I was in their shoes because I went through all of high school. Actually, in high school, we did sort of have this resume writing thing, but in high school, you have no freaking experience.
Yeah.
So how can you even write a resume?
You don't learn how to, you don't even learn how to write a resume. It's just,
No,
I mean,
right.
even
They
the
gave us
little
this
classes.
crappy outline.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, in reality, because of how my parents raised me, I should have had the best resume in class in high school
Yeah.
because of my life experiences.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize working at the motel and all those different things
Yeah.
that
Could be
weren't
part
an
of it.
actual job,
Yeah.
were skills that I could list on a resume.
Yeah.
And then I went through all of college, which every college program fails their students when
Mhm.
they don't teach them the skills and the knowledge that they gained by completing their program that
Yeah.
they can put on their resume
Yeah.
or the types of jobs that they can look at, particularly
know.
the arts.
Yeah.
Because I graduated with a relational communications degree
Mhm.
and a minor in mediation. The only thing I thought I could do was go on to grad school and get a master's degree in marriage and family therapy.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I thought I could do.
Yeah.
And so, other than that, most of my peers that graduated with pretty much the same degree became their first job out of college was being a hostess at one of the fancier restaurants or one of the hotels, like the concierge kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And like, what kind of a career is that? That's like,
Yeah.
and so they really do. So, anyways, to circle it back to my point, I went on to the campus's like career services website and tried to figure out how to write my own resume. It was bogus. It took me 3 days researching on Google to really get a full solid idea of what can go on a resume. I drafted my own resume from scratch, formatting and everything.
Yeah.
And I helped a couple dozen people. I think I charged a couple of them just because they wanted to pay me. But it's even something as basic as writing a resume has gone out the door, and it's become again design fashionable thing instead of this true reflection, just like wearing a suit to an interview when that suit does not show your knowledge base. It's for show. It's how well can I look like the puppet that you need me to be.
Right, exactly.
Well, when we came out of school, there was no resumes. You just fill out an application and you was hired.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to teach us a resume. We just went over there, fill out the application, and you got the job. And so they didn't even check background checks back then. They didn't.
Yeah.
So don't talk about my age. But anyway, we just went. See, that's why you got to bring that man to me.
He's probably more in trouble than I am. I don't think he needs to contend with you too.
I think that I just got to make sure he okay. Just bring him to me. But you went because it was
You
so
start calling
many.
him Papa King.
Yeah, it's so many jobs there that it's so many jobs there that
It was merit based. You walked into a job and you said, here's what I have. Even if you had never had another job, this is, I'm going to work and prove myself to you, right? You had to prove yourself to your employer. You had to prove that you could
Yeah,
do
you're not entitled for a job.
right. You're not
You
entitled to it.
need to prove your worth to
Right.
have a job.
Because we have the right to work, but we don't have the right to a particular job. We have to
Right.
actually earn that, right? We
You
have
can
to.
make money mowing people's lawns.
Yeah.
And work,
Yeah.
you're not entitled to a particular job.
Right.
yes, I am. I'm entitled to be the boss. I'm not entitled to be at the bottom.
Oh my goodness.
Wait, isn't God the boss?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
are
but
you trying to say you're
I'm
God? Are
not.
you trying to take the place of God, David? Blasphemy.
No, I'm not taking his place. But I
You're just a
am
manager.
I am his supervisor on earth.
Oh.
Different than a boss. You should probably, use different words.
Definitely.
I'm his supervisor on earth.
And on that note, I'm going to note that it is 1 hour and 46 minutes in, and baby is letting me know that if I don't eat something soon, I will be gagging the rest of the time instead of
Oh.
talking.
So that means you would be bringing not gonna say it.
Yeah, don't say it. I don't trust my gag reflex at this point.
I don't think we need that on the show, you know.
I will be very quickly vacating the premises. I do not do well with that stuff. So
Okay, so who's going? Well, I think we're gonna let Mama, before she gag, give her final remarks. Give her remarks first.
Oh man. Well, you guys will be surprised to note I actually do not have a quote this time. I didn't prep this time. Usually I've got 5 quotes lined up ready for it, but this time it was just, I'm just going to take it. Yeah, okay. But I want to bring it back to the the whole talk that we had. It goes right back to that personal responsibility. It goes back to, are you going to be an unimpeachable person, right? Where you're not perfect, but you have integrity, you have honesty, you don't take things blindly just because somebody tells you to. You do your own work, you do your own research, and that was the education that our founding fathers had. Everybody knows at this point that Thomas Jefferson was my favorite founder and always will be. If I could go back in time and marry him, I would. But since I'm already married to the excellent man that I have, I won't try to find a time travel machine. But anyway, he took control of his own, if you want to call it destiny, his own future, his own life, and he chose to go against the grain in many ways. But he read, he learned, he grew, he developed his own education plan, and he found mentors and peers who could come around and encourage him in it. And we can't do this alone. It's not possible for us to do this alone. I can tell you right now, I have been exhausted this entire video, but I've got the strength of others around me who are holding me up and encouraging me, and that's why I press on even when I'm sick and pregnant and trying to grow a child. So yeah, let's keep supporting one another. Let's keep challenging one another. Let's really take responsibility for learning for ourselves, not just taking things on blind faith, and changing this country, changing this culture. And yeah, that's what I got for today.
I will have a quote for you for both of us.
Oh, thank you.
The first one is going to be Isaiah 2:11 and 12.
Mm.
A little
Sounds like rain.
I actually turned my volume down on that one.
That was loud.
It was.
But the reason it was rain, because you actually have a quote for both of y'all.
Well, I read Isaiah chapter 2 today, so it was very timely. So it was divinely inspired. Anyway, so verse 11 says, the pride of mankind will be humbled, and human loftiness will be brought low. I'm reading my own handwriting, so apparently I need to do better. The Lord alone will be exalted on that day. Verse 12. And these two go together. So this is one verse or one quote, and there'll be a second. Verse 12 says, for a day belonging to the Lord of armies is coming against all that is proud and lofty. Against all that is lifted up, it will be humbled. In particular to like everything in relation to everything we've talked about today, I feel like these two verses are super timely because everything that people find pride in and like that, boost themselves up to these lofty positions, they will be humbled. It will be humbled. Yeah. And so we might as well just start off with being humble and staying humble because it will happen. And I just found that, no pun intended, to be very humbling, like to keep that humility going. In the second verse, Isaiah 2:22, put no more trust in a mere human who has only the breath in his nostrils. What is he really worth? That's huge too. Like, we need to be putting trust not in each other, not in man, but in God, in the ultimate creator of all. Because that's where our trust can really rely on. Yeah. So yeah, I love, David, what you said to the whole fat thing, faithful, available, and teachable. And I do think I will be incorporating that or a similar sentiment, because in what we're doing, you guys, pride, ego, what we think we know to be true has no place. We engage in this little circle of dialogue too, because we build ideas off of each other and we consider what the other is saying, and sometimes we kind of shift our own perspective based on thoughts and information from another. And so that's why this isn't just a one-man show, although it certainly could easily be, is because we in amongst ourselves are being faithful, available, and teachable. That's why we're showing up, because this isn't just about us spewing what we think and what we feel, what we say to be true to you. Yeah, I can guarantee all of us are growing collectively by doing this show together. So faithful, available, and teachable.
Amen.
Well, I'm gonna let you use that, but if you get compliments, I want 40% of whatever they give you.
That's why I said, or maybe use some variation of it.
Don't be like the woke community and take it and just twist it, because you don't want to pay. I mean, come on now. But no, seriously, just listening to our conversation today, and we got a lot of work to do, period. And as people of God, those of us who say we love God, those of us say we're here to represent God and the love of God, we have to come off the platform of being promoting either side and stay promoting God and the values that He has put in all of us. And so when we look at it, we look at a generation who don't know God.
Yeah.
and they would never know God until we introduced them to God. I didn't say to church, because a lot of people know religion. They
Yeah.
just don't know God. And so it's up to each and every one of us to educate, but remind ourselves in the midst of us education that we're not there to represent ourselves, but to represent God.
Yep.
Through our family, through our community, through our cities and states. And so when we look at it, and like we started off, I feel bad for those who goes to the poll uneducated, because they don't know that they're making laws against themselves. They don't know
Yeah.
that they're making laws against their children. They don't know because they're not educated. And so, so when we start to look at this for what it really is that we have to say enough is enough. And if ain't nobody else going to educate, if it ain't nobody else going to teach somebody, if nobody else going to have that conversation, I'm going to be the one to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And so, I was preaching last night and something came up in the scripture where Jesus says, I chose you, I appointed you, and I planted you.
Mm-hmm.
So he chose us, he appointed us, and he planted us exactly where we are.
Yeah.
And the area or the arena of our life that we are dealing with now. He planted us in government. He planted us in learning the Constitution. He planted us in PMAs. He planted us to stand up for righteousness. So we just got to accept, like you said with your baby, John the Baptist was named John the Baptist, knowing he was going to go through some things and yet die for the very cause that he was sent to earth to represent.
Wow.
And so we have to be that one too. We have to be that person that says, you know what? I'm chosen, I'm appointed, and I'm planted for this particular purpose. And
For such a time as this.
Such a time as this. We have to be the light, salt, and the yeast of the earth. And so with that being said, we're going to stop so mommy can be fed or that baby gonna drop kick her. And so
yeah, hard.
so we thank everybody. Again, this is pre-recorded, so don't get mad at us because we said some things that we know we're gonna ruffle feathers today. So we're just sharing what we believe, and you might not believe what we believe, but if you start reading the Bible, you will. So we thank you guys for joining us, and we are under the 2-hour mark, I believe.
Whew.
And so that lets us know we under the 2-hour mark because she's sleepy. So let's say something to make her riled up, and then she get. No, I'm not gonna do that. But we thank you guys for tuning in. We love you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. God bless.